I couldn't believe my eyes. There was a bright orange boot on my police car right in my own driveway. The HOA wanted $500 to remove it. They had no idea I was the county sheriff, or that this mistake would bring down their entire corrupt operation. Before we start the story, please comment which country you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe for more HOA revenge stories. My name's Marcus Reynolds, and after 23 years in law enforcement, I thought I'd seen every kind of stupid criminal decision possible. Then I moved to Suncrest Estates. I'd purchased the house 6 months earlier, a modest 3-bedroom in a gated community about 20 minutes from my office at the county sheriff's department. After my divorce, I wanted a quiet place with good security where my teenage daughter could stay on her weekends with me. The HOA fees seemed reasonable for the amenities, and the salesperson emphasized security as a key benefit. Our HOA takes safety very seriously, she'd assured me. We have a dedicated security team monitoring the neighborhood 24/7. What she failed to mention was that taking safety seriously meant the HOA president, Victor Klein, had deputized his son-in-law and 2 buddies as community safety officers, who drove around in cars designed to look eerily similar to actual police vehicles, complete with yellow light bars and Suncrest security emblazoned on the sides in the same font as our county patrol cars. I'd noticed their antics over the past few months, aggressively confronting visitors, demanding identification from delivery drivers, and generally acting with authority they didn't legally possess. As sheriff, I'd even received complaints about them from food delivery services whose drivers refused to enter our neighborhood after being harassed. But this, clamping an official county vehicle in my own driveway, this crossed a line that sent ice through my veins. I assessed the situation with the calm that comes from decades of law enforcement. The boot was secured to my front driver's side wheel. The unmarked Dodge Charger was my assigned take-home vehicle, county property with exempt plates that were partially obscured by the design of the wheel well. Though unmarked, it had government plates and required emergency equipment inside. I dialed the number on the violation notice, maintaining the composed demeanor that had helped me negotiate with everyone from armed suspects to quarreling deputies over the years. Suncrest Security, this is Tyler, answered a voice trying too hard to sound authoritative. This is Marcus Reynolds at 1824 Oakwood Drive. There appears to be a boot on my vehicle. I need it removed immediately. Yes, Mr. Reynolds. Our records show an unauthorized vehicle in your driveway overnight, violating Community Covenant Section 12B regarding non-residential vehicles. The removal fee is $500, payable by credit card or through the resident portal. There's been a mistake. This is my county-issued vehicle. I'm exempt from those restrictions. Sir, no one is exempt from HOA regulations. Commercial and government vehicles cannot be stored in residential driveways regardless of your occupation. I took a deep breath. I need to speak with whoever placed this boot on my vehicle. How soon can they be here? Our enforcement officer will be making rounds again after 10 a.m. If you'd like expedited service, there's an additional $125 convenience fee. I checked my watch. It was 6:15 a.m. In less than 3 hours, I was supposed to be briefing 30 officers on the largest coordinated drug operation our county had seen in 5 years. I'll handle this a different way, I said simply and ended the call. Inside my garage was a set of tools that could remove the boot in minutes, part of standard sheriff's department equipment. But this wasn't about the quickest solution anymore. This was about addressing a pattern of harassment and illegal activity that had been escalating throughout our community. I made 2 calls. First to my chief deputy to arrange alternative transportation for the morning operation, then to the county attorney's office. Maureen? Sheriff Reynolds. Remember those complaints about the Suncrest HOA impersonating law enforcement? They just gave us all the evidence we need. And I'd like a warrant ready by noon. The drug bust went forward as planned that morning, without me in a command role, but with my oversight from a hastily arranged operations center. By noon, as my deputies were processing 17 arrests across the county, I was back at Suncrest Estates with County Attorney Maureen Chin and 2 deputies, armed with a search warrant for the HOA office and the security vehicles. We waited until Tyler Klein, the HOA president's son-in-law who ran their security operation, arrived to remove the boot from my vehicle. He pulled up in his mock patrol car, swaggering toward my driveway with the confidence of someone who believed they held power. His face paled when he saw my standard-issue sheriff's department jacket and badge. Mr. Klein, I said, extending a document toward him. I'm Sheriff Marcus Reynolds. This is a warrant to search your vehicle and the HOA premises for evidence of impersonating law enforcement officers, illegal booting of vehicles, and operating an unlicensed security service. "There must be some mistake," he stammered, looking frantically toward his vehicle where another young man sat wide-eyed. "We're just enforcing community guidelines." With vehicles designed to impersonate law enforcement, unauthorized traffic stops within the community, and illegal vehicle immobilization devices? Maureen asked, her tone making it clear she wasn't actually asking. "We've received 17 separate complaints from delivery services, visitors and residents about your activities." As Tyler processed what was happening, neighbors began emerging from their homes. Many had suffered under the HOA's increasingly aggressive tactics but had been too intimidated to speak up. "They clamped my daughter's car last month," called Mrs. Abernathy, an elderly woman from across the street. "Charged us $750 to remove it because she parked in our driveway while visiting. Said visitors couldn't park in driveways overnight. They stopped my brother when he was bringing groceries and demanded to search his car before letting him proceed to my house," added Mr. Tan from next door. More residents gathered, each with their own story of overreach and intimidation. While my deputies secured the HOA office, Maureen and I examined Tyler's vehicle. It contained red and yellow emergency lights, illegal for non-emergency vehicles. A laptop with resident information including work schedules and travel plans. A police scanner, legal but suspicious in context. Handcuffs and restraints, deeply concerning for a civilian security officer. A documentation of fines collected that never appeared in HOA financial statements. At the HOA office, we discovered even more disturbing evidence. The security program had collected over $130,000 in fines and fees over the past year, but only $15,000 had been deposited into HOA accounts. Financial records showed the remainder moving through a labyrinth of personal accounts connected to Klein family members. Even more concerning were the detailed files on residents, including notes about which homes to target for violations and which to leave alone based on personal relationships with the board. "They've been selectively targeting residents who question the board," Maureen observed, flipping through a binder labeled "Problem Residents." My name had been added recently with a note. "Thinks rules don't apply because of job. Show no special treatment." By late afternoon, we had enough evidence to arrest Tyler Klein and his 2 security officers on multiple charges. Impersonating law enforcement. Operating an unlicensed security company. Extortion through unauthorized fines. Illegal use of vehicle immobilization devices. Fraud and misappropriation of HOA funds. As they were being processed at the station, Victor Klein, HOA president and Tyler's father-in-law, arrived with an attorney. "This is harassment," he shouted as he burst into the station. "You can't arrest someone for enforcing community standards." I let him finish his tirade before responding calmly. "Mr. Klein, your security team was equipped with handcuffs and restraints. They've been conducting illegal traffic stops and detaining individuals without authority. They've been extorting money through an unlicensed booting operation. And approximately $115,000 of community funds have disappeared through accounts connected to your family members." His face drained of color as Maureen added, "We're just getting started, Mr. Klein. The forensic accountants arrive tomorrow." What began as a simple case of HOA overreach quickly expanded into something far more sinister. The forensic accountants discovered that Suncrest Estates was just one of 7 communities where the same scheme was operating under different names but similar methods. 1. Establish aggressive security services in affluent communities. 2. Create vague rules that could be interpreted broadly. 3. Selectively enforce against certain residents while ignoring violations by friends and family. 4. Collect fees and fines that largely went unreported to HOA financial statements. 5. Intimidate anyone who asked questions. The operation had generated over $1.2 million in the past 3 years, most of which had been funneled through a web of shell companies. But the most shocking discovery came when we found connections to the city's assistant planning director, who had fast-tracked approvals for Klein's development company while receiving consulting fees from one of those shell companies. 2 weeks after my car was booted, our investigation had expanded to include the county prosecutor's office, the state attorney general's white-collar crime unit, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Residents from across all 7 communities came forward with stories of intimidation, excessive fines, and even instances where residents had been physically detained by security officers for alleged rule violations. "They handcuffed my son for washing his car in our driveway," one mother testified. said he was violating water usage restrictions and detained him until I paid a $350 fine on the spot. The media dubbed it HOA Gate, and it became the largest corruption case our county had seen in decades. Victor Klein and 4 other HOA presidents were indicted on 47 counts ranging from fraud to conspiracy. Tyler and his security team faced additional charges of false imprisonment, impersonating peace officers, and extortion. The city's assistant planning director resigned and was cooperating with authorities, unveiling a tangled web of permit kickbacks and zoning favors that stretched back years. Throughout the investigation, I continued living in my Suncrest Estates home, where I witnessed a remarkable transformation. With the oppressive regime removed, neighbors began talking to each other again. People emerged from their houses without fear of being monitored or reported. An emergency community meeting was called to elect a new HOA board, the first truly democratic process the community had experienced in years. The new board's first action was to disband the security program entirely and reduce HOA fees by 30%. Mrs. Abernathy, the elderly neighbor who had been one of the first to speak up, was elected board president. Under her leadership, the focus shifted from punitive enforcement to community building. "We don't need fake cops patrolling our streets," she declared at her first meeting. "We need neighbors who look out for each other." 3 months after my car was booted, the preliminary hearing for Victor Klein and his co-conspirators began. I was called to testify about the morning I found my vehicle immobilized and the investigation that followed. During cross-examination, Klein's attorney tried to paint the entire investigation as a vendetta because I was personally inconvenienced. "Isn't it true, Sheriff Reynolds, that this entire case stems from your anger over finding a boot on your car? That you used your position to target Mr. Klein and his associates?" I leaned toward the microphone. "This case began because Mr. Klein's organization was illegally impersonating law enforcement, extorting residents, and stealing from the communities they claimed to serve. The boot on my car wasn't the crime, it was evidence of a pattern of criminal behavior affecting hundreds of families." "But you wouldn't have investigated if it hadn't happened to you personally, would you?" he pressed. "Actually, we had already received 16 formal complaints and were building a case. Mr. Klein's decision to target a sheriff's department vehicle simply accelerated our timeline and provided clear evidence of their disregard for the law." The attorney's face fell as I continued. "The real question isn't why I investigated after they booted my car. The real question is why Mr. Klein thought he was above the law in the first place." The courtroom remained silent as the defense attorney returned to his seat. Outside the courthouse, a group of Suncrest residents had gathered in support. They weren't just from my community anymore. People from all 7 affected neighborhoods had formed a coalition to reform HOA governance across the county. "They picked the wrong car to boot," Mrs. Abernathy said with a smile as she handed me a petition with over 4,000 signatures supporting new county regulations for homeowners associations. "But they also picked the right one, if that makes sense. Sometimes it takes someone with authority being victimized before anyone listens to the rest of us." Her words stayed with me in the months that followed. The case resulted in a guilty pleas from Victor Klein and 3 other HOA presidents to avoid trial. Convictions of Tyler and his security team on multiple felony counts. New county regulations requiring transparency and limiting enforcement powers of HOAs. A state investigation into similar schemes operating elsewhere. 1 year after finding that orange boot on my wheel, I sat on my front porch watching children ride bikes freely through our neighborhood streets. The atmosphere had completely transformed. People gardened in their front yards, neighbors chatted across driveways, and community cookouts had replaced threatening notices as the primary form of communication. The new HOA, led by actual community members rather than developers with hidden agendas, had rewritten the covenants to focus on maintaining community assets rather than policing resident behavior. The excessive rules about parking, house colors, and lawn ornaments had been replaced with simple, clear guidelines that fostered pride of ownership without micromanagement. When my shift rotation changed, requiring me to bring home my patrol vehicle more regularly, not a single neighbor complained. In fact, many expressed appreciation for the visible security of having a sheriff's department vehicle in the community. The most satisfying moment came during our community's first annual block party. Mrs. Abernathy presented me with a small plaque that now hangs in my office. It reads simply, "Sometimes justice needs a parking spot." The orange boot that started it all? It sits on my desk at the sheriff's department. A reminder that no one is above the law, but also that sometimes the smallest actions can trigger the greatest changes. I keep it there to remind myself and my deputies that our job isn't just to enforce laws, but to protect people from those who would abuse authority, whether they carry a badge or just pretend to. And sometimes justice begins in your own driveway.